How's everybody doing today? So my name's Lee Chen. I head up strategic partnerships at Fastly. Before Fastly, I spent about 12 years here in New York City working in digital media and entertainment, mostly in the video gaming space, but with a particular emphasis on esports. So working with companies like Twitch, Activision, Blizzard, Riot Games, and so on. Technology teams that I ran were really focused around working full stack, right? So we did everything from program out all the way to encode and transcode, to the web stack that was living at the front end, to the player, the ad integrations, and everything else. So my background is very heavy in the digital media and entertainment space, right? And particularly in digital publishing and streaming video. And you know, that full stack experience, everything was tied together, right? And so a lot of these folks that you see up here on this logo wall, they're experiencing and they're working against the same challenges. And so in that mix, when I was on the other side of the equation, I bought a lot of CDN, spent a lot of time trying to integrate in. And unfortunately, it was really just for dumb bytes, right? Like you were just moving static images. It was stuff like CSS, JavaScript, the images that you never really had to change in a long while. And they were dumb bytes. Like it was not interesting. It was not entertaining. It was not challenging. Scaling it was, to me, as a technology operator, not a particularly fascinating way to spend my days. And the uncacheable content, the dynamic content, that was the really interesting stuff, right? It was the HTML, it was the news feeds, the JavaScript that was actually updating in real time, or I'm sorry, AJAX. It was all the stuff around that where I tended to devote a lot of the engineering cycles in my org. So as time marched on, this is what it became to look like, right? This is a more modern view. You know, 5, 10 years ago, something like the previous slide. But today, it looks more something like this. More and more of the content is dynamic. More and more of it is focused around APIs. More of it is PII. You're trying to customize experiences to the end user, whether it's the ad integration that you're doing in the video stream, or the news feed, or customized content, the shopping cart, whatever it might be. And so this is where, you know, as I'd spent a ton of time as a technology operator, that my teams were focused on these problems. And the CDN was really just about pushing those dumb bytes across the wire, the image or the video blob. So if you had asked me 5, 10 years ago if I was actually going to be here in Dan Rayburn's house at CDN Summit, working for a CDN, presenting about a CDN, probably would have called you nuts. I would have told you, nope, no way, not me, never going to happen. It seems like a lot of really hard scaling problems that are not that actually interesting to work on. Clearly, I was wrong. So the core reason that I ended up joining Fastly was what I discovered was that a large portion of the content that I thought of as uncacheable was actually cacheable, right? So, and we think of that as dynamic content, right? But it's actually event-driven. And event-driven content is unpredictably static. What that means is it sits there for a week, a month, a couple of minutes, and then it changes. And when it changes, you don't actually know when that's going to happen, what's going to trigger it. And late-breaking news, an API update, something integrated that you're tied into at Twitter, something's going to trigger that. And when that event happens, you need to be able to invalidate instantly, globally, in order to be able to have the cache replicate that. Otherwise, you're just operating it on your own infrastructure. What Fastly can do is actually extend that out, right? You can take your app stack, have an event trigger something, and then propagate that change globally, whether that's just the content update or an actual configuration update to the way that you want your content handled. So again, examples, mobile APIs, user-generated comments, user-generated content, news headlines, video streams, all of that can be event triggered and then updated on the Fastly edge. And that's the key thing. It's not just that we can invalidate the content and get rid of it quickly, 150 milliseconds or less, but we can also enable you to action on it. Right? You can change the way that the content is handled in your configs on Fastly. Event-driven content is really just part of the puzzle, though, right? It's just one piece. The rest of the puzzle involves a lot more than that. If you're operating a modern media platform stack, there's a lot more to it than just in cache invalidation. There's how you want the content handled, what you want paywalled, a wide variety of other things. And you're also operating a technology team. So there's more to it than just cache invalidation. There's also the fact that you want your edge to reflect your in-house development stack. Whatever you're running in your colo or your hybrid cloud or your cloud environment, you want that extended out. And you want the ability to cache it. You want to be able to get rid of it very, very quickly. You want to be able to take and extend app logic code that you might have in your application and move that to the edge. because it's going to save you time and energy in scaling it. And that's all as a platform, right? If you're operating a modern media website today or a streaming video site, it's a platform. You're tied in someplace, right? The internet is interconnected, and the more you're interconnected, the more you operate as a platform. So we think of that as smart caching, and our belief is that you should be able to really extend, truly extend your entire application right to the edge. Have it become part of your application environment, not just the CDN, not just pushing dumb bytes. So I'm going to pick on CloudFront for a second because it's kind of easy. But CloudFront was built to be basically to push dumb bytes, right? It's a distributed file store. It's got some cache handling in it. It's a great product for what it is, but it doesn't come with any of the real native controls that you need in order to really be able to extend your infrastructure. So you've got application logic at edge. That's really key to us, right? The idea that you can actually take and execute code right at the edge. We do that in real time. CloudFront doesn't. And validation is really key to the entire environment at Fastly as well. It's a pretty key differentiator for us, the fact that you can instantly purge. And again, that's 150 milliseconds or less. So super simple example of some of those things. This is the homepage of Wired.com. It's a customer of ours, a traditional media house that used to publish a magazine once a month. I'm sure most of you read it, hopefully. And they needed to move into a modern publishing environment, right? So not only are all these images and some of these headlines cached at Fastly, but the entire HTML frame is, right? So the entire page, when you go to www.wired.com, is actually cached on Fastly. And they can do that because they can cache and validate anytime there's an update. So if that headline updates, they issue a purge call to us, and it's gone from the edge within 150 milliseconds or less. We load the new page, we serve it to the end user, you're off to the races. Paywall content, you can actually cache some parts of that, and those parts that you can't, you leverage the Fastly network to just do DSA and accelerate it through. But a large part of this is really based around smart, well, that's really loud, sorry about that. It's really based around continuous integration and delivery, right? And the ability that comes with that, which the reason that you would want to do CI/D at the edge, which is that it's actually part of your app stack, that you're actually running code. So quickly on continuous integration. Martin Fowler's got a great blog up on continuous integration delivery. If you're doing agile development and you haven't read it, you should. He ties three things together when you're looking at CI/D, and that's reduced deployment risk, believable progress, and user feedback. So we roughly correlate those in our minds to control, confidence, and visibility. I'm going to spend a couple seconds just talking about this. The 2-second deploys on Fastly is actually what it takes, or how long it takes in order for you to change something in your configuration on our CDN and then push it to the edge. Not only can you push it to the edge in 2 seconds, you can actually roll it back in 2 seconds. And it's fully versioned, so you can push 6 versions, test each one, see how it's going, and then roll it back. That's a pretty dramatic difference to traditional CDNs where you might have to wait 15 minutes, a couple hours, maybe a day. So you can imagine trying to do an agile workflow and then pushing a config out, waiting 15 minutes. Your developers are sitting around, probably going to get a coffee break. They come back, something's changed, it's broken, it's not. You got to roll it back and forth again. Continuous integration really needs real-time response, and that's what our network offers you. It's also audit logs, so you can see what's going on. You've got real-time logs and analytics, so anything that we can see on our network, you can drive it back to a log stream and send it to any log destination that you want. Application logic. So how many folks are familiar with Varnish? All right, great, bunch of hands in the room, awesome. So it's an open source HTTP accelerator, right? We're built on top of Varnish. It's at the core of our network. We've highly optimized it for speed at scale. But the key thing about Varnish is actually that it comes with its own scripting language, VCL, Varnish Configuration Language. That VCL gives you the ability to completely control the content and how it's handled right at the CDN edge. So we've written a bunch of modules, but you can actually write your own. And we give you the ability, either through our UI or via our API, to actually execute that code right at edge. Some of the modules that we run, some pretty interesting use cases up there. You can also serve synthetic responses with us, so you can just generate a beacon. And then we have ad tech companies that are taking those beacons back and parsing those logs as opposed to actually just running beacon infrastructure on their own. So they've completely moved that entire workload from their cloud environment to our edges. Just a snippet, to show you that you can actually do it. This is a GeoIP snippet. So you're looking at a standard piece of code that's generated inside of our environment, looks at geolocation, and then changes how the content is handled. And you can update that again within a couple of seconds and change how your content is being routed. Load balancing, all that is done within VCL. So this is the power of the platform here. Fastly's Cloud Accelerator is a solution that we launched about 18 months ago. It's built entirely within functions that already exist in Fastly and using VCL. So we rolled a complete solution without actually having to touch or change any core engineering, aside from the cross connects to Amazon and to Google, which obviously require a port and a cable and somebody actually doing that. Aside from that, it was all done within VCL. The linchpin of Cloud Accelerator is actually Origin Shield. So just spend a second on that. Varnish by default does something called request collapsing, where it takes a cache miss or any number of cache misses into a given local node of Varnish and sends one or two requests back instead of sending all those back as a stampeding herd. So 24 pops around the world. With request collapsing in Fastly, you would only see 48 to 50 requests. What Origin Shield does is actually extends that out to another level and request collapses back to a single shield pop. And that shield pop then sends one or two requests back to Origin. What that results in is something like this. What Fastly can do, because of the efficiency of the network and because of the request collapsing, is actually cache and hold more content in cache than any other CDN. If you're not familiar with Catchpoint, this is a third-party measurement tool that we use all the time, pretty religiously, to measure performance. Big fan of Mehdi and his team over there. So it's about a month time span. Y-axis is milliseconds. It's a little hard to see here. Lower is better. What lower is showing you is, without those jaggy spikes and that flat line, is that we're actually serving that content from cache, from within our network, versus actually going back to Origin, having to get a request, load it into cache, and then pass it on to the user. So this is proof in the pudding. If you're not familiar with Drupal, it's the largest open source web CMS on the planet. It accounts for about 12.2% of the Alexa top 100,000. Their previous CDN on any given day was sending about 5.7 million requests back to Origin. A year later on Fastly, it was about 59,000. That's the difference between a 90% cache hit rate and a 99.999% cache hit rate. It's pretty significant. Most of our customers actually see somewhere between a 30 to 80% Origin offload across a variety of different workloads. Right, so that's the efficiency around the network and the efficiency of Origin Shield. That's the efficiency of moving application workloads to the edge and not just static content. So just to wrap up, most of our customers in the media space end up adopting Fastly for these reasons. Origin offload and combining Origin offload with application execution right at the edge, as well as being able to integrate it right into an agile workflow, are pretty critical to the way that we end up servicing our customers, and that's a pretty core function and a core philosophy for the way that we look at the world. That's it. Happy to take questions. Anybody? Yeah.
What's the business model for Origin Shield in terms of charging your customers since they're saving on transaction fees and transfer fees when you get out of Origin? Do you take a cut of that, or you charge them flat?
Great question. So the question was Origin Shield. What's the revenue model and what's the pricing model associated with it? So it's actually baked into the platform. There's no platform fee. You're not paying anything extra for it in terms of a flat monthly fee. What we do charge for is the cost between Origin and a Shield pop. But because of cache efficiency, that's actually dramatically less than what you would be paying for Amazon egress or something like that.
So it's like a mid-gress.
It's effectively mid-tier, and you're paying for the mid-tier, but it's a fraction of the traffic because of the way request collapsing works on our network. Yep.
To me, it sounds like you're moving a little from the CDN position to something a bit going closer to cloud computing.
Fair question, yeah. So the question was, it sounds like we're moving more towards cloud computing than traditional CDN. So I think in any CDN, you're talking about distributed computing, right? That's basically what's happening. So executing logic at the edge is going to become something that I think traditional CDNs are going to need to compete with more and more, right? If you stop and you think about it for half a second, Google and Amazon operate the largest networks on the planet today. They service more and deliver more traffic than anybody else. They're executing code at edge, but there's still functionality that you can get by pushing, and performance benefits that you can get by pushing that workload or some parts of that workload to the edge, which would be Fastly or another CDN. Anything else?
Can you do the same kind of purging with the HLS manifest, for example?
Absolutely, yeah. So the question was, can you do purging with HLS manifest? Yeah, you absolutely can. So you can take any manifest and you can have it, it's a reverse proxy.
On the fly, or?
Stephen, you want to answer that one? Can you modify HLS manifest on the fly?
Yes.
Yeah. HLS manifest rewriting and doing that on the fly. So that's not something you can do yet on the edge. That would involve looking inside of the HTTP body and making edits along the way. So we don't expose that functionality today.
What's the CI and CD model you guys use? Like, what's the software you guys use?
I'm sorry?
What's the CI, the continuous integration and continuous deployment?
Sure. So the question was, what's the CI&D software that we use? So we use a variety of different tools internally. The slide that I had up was actually more about how we can tie directly into your CI&D methodology, right? So the entire platform is API driven, so you can push any change that you want, any configuration change that you want directly to our API, and it's propagated through the network within a couple of seconds. All right, so whatever CI&D methodology or workflow that you have, you can build us right into the work stack. Wire.com, Conde, a variety of Conde, other Conde sites is one example of many folks that do that. Anything else? Yeah.
I didn't see SSD in this presentation. I'm trying to work through the technologies. How's the scale of that going in terms of cost to roll out?
Sure. So the question was SSDs and why I didn't have that included in the talk, because it's something that Artur Bergman, who's our CEO, used to rave about and drop the F-bomb every time he was talking about why you should have it in your stack and you don't. I've omitted that here because we've done it. We continue to be a pure SSD fleet. We're pure 10 gig all the way through. We're testing 100 gig now. We've scaled that from, I think the first time Artur gave that talk, we had 4 POPs globally, a couple in Europe and a couple in North America. We're 24 POPs today, going on 26 by mid-year, probably 30 plus by the start of 2017, 100% SSD. It's great. The cost efficiencies continue to scale. The performance benefits are still there. That's a large part of the challenge in growing any kind of CDN, right, is just blowing that up and continuing to grow it. Yeah.
Have you guys started implementing any NVMe type hardware and interfaces? And if so, have you guys seen any performance improvements?
So I'm not sure. I'd have to look into that and get back to you on it. If you want to shoot me an email about it, it's lee@fastly.com. Happy to answer that later. Anything else? Great. Thanks so much.